Role-playing games are set in a milieu, a world or a dimension or someplace. If you play Call of Cthulhu, then it's set in the real world, except, with monsters. If you play fantasy role-playing games, your game might be set in someone's pre-built fantasy universe, like Golarion or Glorantha or the Forgotten Realms. Or you might do what I usually did in my fantasy games, create your own world. There's no moral better or worse in this. I mean, if you create your own world, you might feel, I am super creative, but on the other hand, we have so much time we can spend away from our jobs to create. If we didn't create the world, we can put presumably more effort into the adventures. It all kind of works out and balances. Now, I have recently started the Cthulhu Mythos Saga line of fantasy adventures, which are suitable for Dungeons & Dragons. Each is a complete campaign meant to last 4 or more months. The first was Ghoul Island. The next one coming up is Yig Snake Granddaddy, and these are going to be followed by a lot more. But consider, here you are with your awesome campaign world, whatever it is. And yet over here is my or someone else's awesome campaign pack. The question is, how can I take a campaign pack and fit it into my world? Okay, now I'm going to use Ghoul Island and Yig Snake Granddaddy as my examples, but these rules I'm going to describe apply to any fantasy campaign, whether using one of Paizo's adventure paths or the Ghosts of Saltmarsh or Dungeons & Dragons versus Rick and Morty, which is a real thing apparently. So let's go over 3 possibilities. First, one simple method is you simply, when you get the new campaign, you just transport your players from your world to the new one where they can play the new campaign. This is kind of cheating because now you're not using your world anyway, it's just a different place. But as long as they have a way back, what the heck, you got to keep your world, they can dimension the new world, all works out. Another possibility, a little more challenging, is you take a corner of your world that's not fully mapped out, and hey, who has time to make a whole world, right? And insert your new stuff. This is fair game. Every world ought to have some corners like that. Now, one of the most complete fantasy worlds ever created is Glorantha. Well, when I developed Glorantha with Greg Stafford, we explicitly set special parts in the world called blank lands, and our plan was to never detail these. Glorantha is a particularly deep world, and game masters get pretty obsessive about published material on it, and so we knew that some of them were reluctant to do things in areas that the publishers might later contradict. So we set aside the blank lands as like player reservations, kind of safe places, right? So I think Chaosium has since reneged on the promise, but hey, that's on them, right? So we set that aside. We knew that was important. Now, inserting a campaign into your world is probably pretty easy, actually. Now, it helps if the campaign's naturally already designed to fit anywhere. For instance, a long time ago, there was the Thieves World campaign set in the city of Sanctuary. Almost every world has some dismal port city, like Gotham or something, where you can have creepy things happening. Sanctuary can take over that city. Just change the name. If you have a city somewhere the players haven't been to, it's a corrupt old port place, you put in Sanctuary. Ghoul Island that I did takes place on a tropical island. Every game world is probably going to have a tropical ocean somewhere. Just plop the island of Farsine somewhere in it, and you're good, right? Now, the campaign I did, Yig Snake Granddaddy, is set in an uninhabited wilderness. Again, almost every campaign has uninhabited wildernesses. Even if the players have heard legends about it containing something quite different, like giants or dragons, you can say, well, those are fake, or you can just find another spot for one. So you can, with this world, or if you find a place where there's room for one, hey, this thing doesn't have to be all desert, you're thinking. This part here can be mountains and forest. Just plop it in, Yig fits in. Fit it into your world, find a spot, and it can be a big spot. I mean, if you think of Earth as a type, like you need to put some big thing on Earth, well, there's actually pretty large areas that people don't go very much, that your players are unlikely to have been to, like all of Siberia, Greenland. There's huge tracts of area that you can afford to put aside. That's on Earth, which is pretty well explored. On your fantasy world, you should be able to fit these things in easily. The most difficult, but for some people, the most rewarding approach is to actually fit the new campaign into your existing world so it hooks up. For example, in Yig Snake Granddaddy, eventually the serpent people and their allies start to kidnap and threaten a nearby human kingdom. Now, of course, in the campaign, we provide a kingdom for them to menace, but you can ignore our suggestion and include your own. This third way is pretty fun because you can really bring a threat home to the players. Instead of some new place they haven't really interacted much with, what if the serpent folk in Yig are menacing the same kingdom that their previous adventures were in? If Yig is about to destroy Waterdeep or Hyrule, that really brings it home. So I seem to be recommending this third choice. It's pretty cool, but it does take more work and there's more opportunities for you to make a mistake. Like you set up Yig and they say, wait, didn't the city have the magical rock of keeping away all gods? And you go, oh, dang, I forgot about that, or whatever it is. And that's why we include the ready-built kingdom, right? But you can also do a fourth approach, which is you can combine adventures. Using mine as an example, say you play Ghoul Island. By the end of the campaign, the island of Farzin is endeared itself to the players. They fought for it, they bled for it, they were helped by its noble NPCs, they imprisoned or killed its evil NPCs. They know a lot about Farzin. So next you decide to play Yig Snake Granddaddy, and you find a big island nearby that's uninhabited and said, there is the wilderness, or even a part of the Farzin island that you didn't use in the first campaign. And now Farzin, that your players are already vested in, gets menaced by Yig. Again, it'll require some work, and we didn't set it up to work that way because we expect plenty of people will play Yig Snake Granddaddy without owning Ghoul Island. Plus, what if instead you want the serpent people to be menacing Ravenloft? It's perfectly doable. Anyway, there are 3 or 4 useful ways to play something fun even in an established world. Your established world should not ever be a barrier to something cool. It should only make it easier or more cool to bring it in. I've used all these methods in my, 45 years of role-playing, and I expect to keep doing so as long as I keep running role-playing games, which I still do about once a week. Now you know.